everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. We're at that beautiful transition time. I'm just going to give the exact same talk that Harry gave just before. It's just a complete repeat, nothing new. The topic is enlightenment. And that's ultra real. And I think he and I share the same sense of there's no time to fucking waste. I mean, if you can't tell, the world is in such a serious state right now. And it requires urgent, intelligent intervention, way better ideas, way better alternatives, absolutely new systems that we can propose to people all over the world. And regarding our own systems that stopped functioning several generations ago, and say, wait a minute, let's really do this better. Which is what the project of enlightenment is. And right now, if it's not urgent, you should not be doing it. It is too late to be part of the culture of distraction, which is what most people are doing, trying to avoid anything that actually needs to be done. And what we need to be doing as artists is be part of the culture of focus. Pay attention, look, listen deeply, look deeply, look beyond, look inside, look forward. Look backward in your own being, in your own body, and look forward in your own body. And recognize your body doesn't actually only belong to you. All the people you love, your body also belongs to. All your ancestors are there. You have your mother's face. And you are everyone you've ever met. And the only limit of your life is you haven't met enough people yet. So start meeting some different people. And start expanding who you are. And recognizing that the infinite part of you has only just started. I'm so thrilled that the hospitality and food people are with us. My favorite enlightenment chapter in the Upanishads. The quality of food that you eat produces mind. And we're not just saying no GMOs casually. We're not just talking about taking care of the earth as a random duty. It's actually the quality of your mind. Because every part of agriculture is culture. How you treat the earth, what you put into your mouth, actually is a profound moral principle that creates the quality of intelligence, vision, outlook, and imagination that guides your life and the life of everyone you come into contact with. Eating correctly and eating with moral intelligence is not just a casual thing. It's the single most important way every single day you are voting for the future of the planet or against it. 3 times a day. And the most immediate way you are either the problem or the solution is your food choice. Where your money goes, who you're supporting, and that's in your body and it's in your mind. Okay, but that sentence is good. Quality of the food you eat produces mind. The next sentence is the quality of light you take in produces speech. enlightened speech. Your ability to speak, your ability to formulate speech has to do with light. As human beings, each of us brings our light into the world. It's the light that shines from your heart, which is why we do theater. Theater is actually recognizing the human being as the bearer of light, as the creator of light in darkness, as the creator of the possibility of vision. And it's understanding that light is generated in each of our lives. And what it is to have a shared moment of light is enlightenment. One of my favorite projects in my department, which I'll talk about in a minute, in UCLA, I teach in a program called World Arts and Cultures. Right? Everything is in the plural. Because it's important not to think singular ever again. The arts are plural, but the cultures are plural. There's no center. There's just dialogue. The most important word in world arts and cultures after the word world, because what it means for all of us is we are now part of the world, we are addressing the world, we are citizens of the world. So thinking world at the beginning of every sentence is very, 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 very important, and getting out of thinking selfishly about us and just thinking, okay, world. What is the world implication for everything we're doing? How do we think as citizens of the world? How do we act as citizens of the world? Arts, the arts are plural. The reason we love the word art, right, is it just means one thing, doing something skillfully. Right? I think of art as, how do you talk to your dad? How do you tell your father something he doesn't want to hear? Because he's going to be right forever, you know that. And he thinks he's helping everyone, but he's of course destroying the whole family. Who gets to talk to Dad and say, Dad, you really have to stop it? It has to be done skillfully. If you do it crudely, it really backfires. Even though you think you're going to move the world forward, you will move the world backwards. Which is what we see a lot of these days. Is people imagining they're moving the world forwards, but because they don't do it skillfully, the backlash means the whole world has gone backwards. So when we say art, we mean let's do it skillfully. Really with incredible nuance, incredible ability to inflect, and incredible ability to recognize and activate an inner dynamic. Realizing that nothing, because we're in this nightmare of materialism, where we just think of everything as things, including people. And we forget that no, the nature of the world is change. The nature of the world is dynamic. Everything's actually already in motion. And if you're not planning for that motion, you're like a tennis player who forgot that the ball was moving. It's moving, so you have to move. You can't say, I know where I am and I have my strategy. No, you've got to move. The ball is moving. And it's not moving to where you wanted it to move. It's moving somewhere else. So you can't say, oh, the ball didn't go to where I want, so I'm just going to stay right here in the court and let that ball go over there. No. Go get that ball before it hits the ground. Move. Move intelligently, move skillfully, and move brilliantly. But stay on it and stay with it. And please return serve. Life is about, can you hit the ball back to anyone over the net? Please return serve. This dynamic, this idea that it's all a conversation, it's all in motion, it's all shared between us. You're not playing tennis against a wall with a line on it. And the skill right now, for this generation and in this century, the skill is one thing: it is sharing. How good are we at sharing? How good are you at sharing? How creatively are we sharing the water, the air, the resources, and the future? With everyone all over the world. Fortunately, here in Holland, you have a lot of practice at sustained episodes of enslaving the rest of the planet. And so you have incredible karma, which actually lets you participate in a visionary, generous, compassionate, and humane way for the future of places that you've already had a role in the past. And to talk about global thinking in Holland, when you guys were some of the first people to get in boats and go conquer people and enslave them, we have to say, okay, what do we mean by globalization? Is it different than that, perhaps? Or do we imagine globalization as a continuation of our noble history? And I think we have to say, we don't imagine that. We really are now having to think another way. And so when we're talking about a globalized mindset, it's actually understanding your role in a much bigger dynamic. It's first of all understanding, one of the things that's important to me in teaching in a department called World Arts and Cultures, is you have art, which is the thing that got made, but the art is just a reflection of a culture. What is a culture? And how do you recognize cultures? The culture of people who believe that torture is just fine. Torture is a culture. Let's not just think of culture as ethnic. Let's not just think of culture as skin color. Let's recognize every person you're going to deal with. You have to recognize where they are culturally. What are the cultures that they're part of? And you have to engage with every human being through their cultures. The culture of people who like Formula One racing, the culture of people who believe you can put an occupying army in someone else's country and go from door to door not speaking the language and removing all young men between the age of 15 and 35, and you will be achieving something. It's a culture that thinks that way. That's how we can help in Iraq and Afghanistan, really. Like, it's a culture, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking. And we have to recognize now, we share things culturally and we don't share things. How do we move across cultures? How do we create the space for movement across and through cultures? And again, I mean culture as not the national food or flag. I mean the culture of rape. And the culture of generosity, which is a cultural thing. Part of your culture, your personal culture, your family culture, is to give everything you can give to people. And generosity is your culture. And you realize you're here on earth to give and to share. The culture of giving means you have to get really good at it. Practice it deeply. Be very imaginative about how you do it. Again, just to take a world development example, in every major spiritual tradition, whether it's Judaic or Islamic, whether it's Buddhist or Christian, you are forbidden to give alms in public. If you are trying to help someone and you show that in public, it is about your ego and not about anyone you're helping. And your act of helping is hypocritical and damages yourself and the person who you claim to be helping. As you know from your own sister or brother or uncle or cousin or nephew or daughter, if you are seen to be publicly helping them, you have just done something horrible. Every human being has their pride and wants to feel, I did this myself. And if you really want to help someone, you have to figure out how to do it secretly, which is what artists are doing every day, is you're helping out secretly. You're helping out in a way people don't even recognize. And because they don't recognize it, it might work. You're looking at the situation and you say, what way can we intervene without putting an occupying army on every street corner, without going house to house arresting all young men? A different kind of intervention. Intervention that's part of a dynamic and is trying to solve a problem in a way that the politicians are unable to even imagine. If I can just give you an example of some of my favorite European Enlightenment, these two guys, I'm going to talk about men for 1 second, I know. Women are taking over, I got it. It's just my last gasp right now. Nonetheless, I'm a sentimental for the 18th century for a moment. These two guys, Haydn and Mozart. What I love about Haydn and Mozart is they were part of the Freemason movement, which were groups of European intellectuals who were meeting in secret several nights a week, trying to imagine how could Europe become a democracy out of these autocracies. For that reason, their meetings were raided by secret police all the time. It was a very complicated situation, and after the French Revolution, anyone in the rest of Europe who was like repeating this rhetoric, liberté, fraternité, égalité, was subject to arrest everywhere, which is why it's not in Mozart's letters. Nonetheless, these meetings were going on of the European intellectuals who were trying to figure out how could Europe actually achieve democracy. And there were two composers who were coming to those Friday night meetings. It's amazing when artists are in the room. Clearly, Mozart, I think, had to have met Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. Mozart wrote in the last year of his life 3 pieces of music for the glass harmonica, the instrument invented by Benjamin Franklin. And of course, Thomas Jefferson challenged the world with this statement, all men are created equal. Now, what does that mean, equality? Can you show that? Can you prove that? Can you, of course, look around. People are so unequal. How can you say that? Where would there be any truth in that statement? It's something you would like to believe, but is actually, you can't show that it's true. What I like is that these two artists were in the room and worked on the problem of how do we demonstrate equality is true. How can we think about equality in a way that has a future? And how can we actually create working models of equality in a society that is so unequal? They invented the string quartet. They said, as artists, we're going to propose a structure where all 4 people actually are equal. The conversation stops, the whole system collapses if one person leaves. It's not 3 people accompanying one person who sings all the time. It's an actual conversation and exchange among 4 equals. Here is a working model to the world of what we mean when we say equality. And they went one further step and invented and perfected something called Sonata Form, which right now Europe is freaked out about all over again. Idea A presents itself, and it's just feeling great. And then, unbelievably irritatingly, idea B appears. Idea A can't get over that idea B is now on Earth, and idea A has to completely reimagine and reinvent itself to include idea B. Hello? That is Sonata Form. That is the basis of European music. Social inclusion. And reimagining yourself when other people come into your life. And realizing none of us will ever be the same. Thank God. This act of resilience, imagination, creativity, and response in which, of course, none of us actually have real identities. You are all the people you ever met. And if you really want to be more interesting, please meet more people. Please. Most people are surrounded by their friends who are as much like them as they can get. Please go meet some people who are not like you and start hanging out with them. Please. Please. Stop asking life to be your mirror. Please. And turn it into a really open door, open window, open mind, open-ended life. The radical steps are, first of all, why I still love theater and music in old forms. Is the big project, I mean, the internet is so cool, and I have to thank the CIA for making it possible. And thank God, because we can now be in solidarity with people all over the world in beautiful ways and redefine communities and create completely new communities of exchange and mutual interest. This is so exciting. But the other project is sharing actual space. Because human beings are super possessive about space. This is my territory. What does it mean to represent and understand that the deepest thing that we can share is space? Which is a quality of mind, is also a quality of heart. To welcome people into your space. To actually get over the idea of your. Recognize all of us are here on a very temporary visa, which will be up very soon. Your lifespan is so short. Why not share it and extend it by sharing it? This project I think of as artists creating the next generation of working groups. What I'm trying to do in California, in University of California, Los Angeles, is I'm founding an organization called the Boethius Initiative. Boethius is a really interesting guy. I'll just mention quickly. 5th century Rome, right? The fabulous Colosseum culture that produces a Donald Trump. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let's take the foreigners and feed them to the lions as entertainment. That kind of stuff. And a level where politics is so degraded that you can't even believe it, and it's just all morphed into giant, empty entertainment. Sound familiar? 5th century Rome. We're there. There was a moment where somebody in the White House said, oh, you know, things are so degraded here, why don't we invite a great moral philosopher to come and be chief of staff and lift the tone of things? And they called this guy named Boethius. Now, Boethius is a very interesting philosopher. He wrote 6 volumes of the philosophy of music, and they are truly breathtaking. And then his big culture project was to, Rome had become Christian, but there was this irritating thing that their entire culture was based on Greek culture. So does this mean we have giant, vast pogroms and we rip Greek culture out by the roots and replace it by Christianity? Boethius proposed a less violent solution and did his philosophical work of understanding that if you go deep into Greek culture, deep into Greek mythology, deep into Greek philosophy, and you go deep into Christianity, they meet. They actually have this shared ground, deep ground. So you don't have to rip one culture out as you're becoming whatever, but you recognize that they can coexist and actually each deepen the other if you look deeply. So they called this guy and said, oh, you've read my books? Amazing. Sure, I can come to the White House. And he comes over for the Tuesday staff meeting, and you know, he's sitting there not wanting to say anything because he's just learning what's going on, but after about 20 minutes he has to interrupt and say, excuse me, it would not really be correct for you to take these people's homes away from them. You know, you should really reconsider that. And I said, thank you for bringing that up. Then things go on, and then finally he has to interrupt again and said, yeah, please don't take the money away from those people because this would actually not be morally correct. And they say, thank you, we'll note that. After a while, it becomes incredibly irritating having a great moral philosopher around the White House. You can't do anything. You can't take care of any business. There's a problem with everything. We got to get rid of this guy. The trouble is, we've invited him in. He now knows too much. He was in all those damn meetings. Damn, what will we do? Okay, we'll put him in a dungeon. Because you just got to get rid of him. So they put him in this dungeon for a while, and then they realized he just could talk to somebody, so they have to find a deeper dungeon. So they find a truly deep dungeon where he will never see daylight again. And then after a while, it's just, you know, as always, he did go to those meetings, he did hear stuff. Even just having him alive is annoying, so they got giant clubs and went down to the basement and beat him into putty. And finally, he was silent and gone, and nobody had to worry about him. In his last month, in the deep dungeon, he wrote his final book. I don't know if it was smuggled out on toilet paper, but it is the first great work of prison literature. It's called The Consolation of Philosophy. In this book, there's no Jesus and there's no Zeus or Hercules. There is the goddess of wisdom who walks through the stone walls of his cell and sits down next to him on his bed, and together they sing songs about the nature of justice. She has no pity for his self-pity. He says, oh, it's unfair how I've been treated. She says, oh, shut up. It's the wheel of fortune. You were happy to buy into it when it was here. You can't complain when it's there. Get real. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and look for deeper justice in the world and be part of that discussion, which is not about your fortunes. It's about the fortunes of everyone. The book goes to this amazing place where eventually it's about the movement of the planets, and as Martin Luther King said, justice, the universe bends towards justice. Just want to say, this book, 5 centuries later, was the most copied book in the Middle Ages in Europe. At a time when you couldn't get a paperback, you had to go. If you wanted a book, you had to write it out and copy it out by hand. The Consolation of Philosophy became the most copied book 5 centuries later. and 15 centuries later, it is the only book written in the 5th century that you can get in paperback. And the people who killed this guy, the only reason we even know about them is because of him. And of course, for me, the truth is always being told by somebody who's, you can't read in the newspaper, who's not visible, but is actually going to testify to your existence. And is the person who actually is singing songs with justice and wisdom. Can we be smart? Yes, that's easy. Can we be wise? That's harder. And can we be just? That's the only actual question. So I need artists, not just to be clever, not just to be smart, not just to be cute. I mean, please be all those things. But to be wise. And to be just. And to create more justice in the world. Because wherever there's violence, and you know this from your own family, there is violence because there is a lack of communication. Because you do not recognize my existence, I have to put a bomb in your car. And you know that from your brother, let alone from a small country. Violence occurs when communication shuts down. And what our task is, as artists, is to make sure the channels of communication remain open. Not just about nice topics, but about difficult, painful, incredibly hard to swallow topics. And we have to find a way to say very complicated, very difficult things. So guess what? Music was invented, poetry was invented, painting was invented. All these things that are gorgeous, beautiful, attractive, amazing, life-enhancing, were invented as a way to say very difficult things, beautifully, in a way that's irresistible, in a way that people have to bring them into their lives instead of push them out. In a way that you become part of people's consciousness. Not by standing there and convincing them to stop torturing, but to create something which shifts the way a generation feels about torture. It's not a marketing campaign. And it's not propaganda that we're here for. Right? The difference between art and propaganda and marketing is the marketing department is trying to sell you something. Art is not for sale. They can't buy your vote if you're an artist. You're actually the one person who's going to make something whether it sells or not. To put it another way, none of us are our job. In this nightmare time that we're living in, where we're defining ourselves by our income and by our job opportunities, is just loathsome. Who you are is not your job. Who you are is all the things you do every day that no one pays you to do. And you do those things because that's who you are. All the things you don't do for money, you do because this is who you are. This is what you stand for. This is what you care about. This is what you prioritize. That's what you make your art out of. And just to take a brief example, thank God we're in Limburg where they haven't cut the cultural budget. But most other places they have, and it's gone. So don't get used to it. One of my kind of lifelong heroes is the Drupad brothers. The Drupad brothers. The tradition of Drupad in India is this amazing pre-Vedic singing, where you're on one vowel for 90 minutes. And in India, it's understood that sound is a healing property. And you actually heal people through sound and through the voice. And it's understood that words are imprecise and only music can be precise. And there's one family that has had the Drupad tradition in the family for 500 years now. And I have all their records, and they have, every 2 years is a new set of, every generation is a new set of brothers. I couldn't believe it. I was in one situation where suddenly I was on the same program as these incredible people. This meditative music that just opens you inside and outside. And I thought, oh my God. I had just come from my home in Los Angeles to Europe, and here they were. I was meeting them at last. We were having dinner. I was hyperventilating. So I said, okay, so where are you coming from? They said, Los Angeles. Here I'm thinking of exotic India. They've been in Los Angeles for the last 4 months. I didn't know. And I said, well, how can you practice this ancient art form that is so slow, that slows your pulse down, that actually slows your pulse down so your perceptions begin to open? Because the reason most of us are not perceptive is because our heartbeat is going too fast, because we're in a rush, and this erratic, quick heartbeat, we're busy looking around like birds, and we don't have any time to actually stop and really look or really listen, because our heart won't stop, and we're just racing through everything. I said, how can you practice this incredibly meditative, slow art form in a city that's as fast as Los Angeles? One of the brothers looked right through me with laser eyes and said, life is always slow. Only your mind is fast. Whoa. The pace at which a child grows, or a tree grows, or a flower opens is slow. Hello. So I said, oh, education. They have a school in Bhopal, right? The environmental disaster city of all time is where they have their school. I said, tell me about your school. So they said, well, we get up at 3 a.m, start singing at 4, because that's when the low notes are really good. And you have these really low notes, and then we sing up the dawn. And over the next 3 hours, go higher and higher and higher. And we do our pre-dawn prayer, and the sunrise occurs. Then we cook breakfast. And what the students in our school learn is how to cook, because you would never accept money for your art. You have to feed people in every possible way. Thank you.